I was a kid in the town of Brookline, Massachusetts, which is immediately west of Boston. I mean, it's 3 miles from downtown Boston. My parents were both immigrants from Greece, but remarkable, each of them in their own way. My dad came over here when he was 15, didn't speak a word of English, didn't have a nickel in his pocket, and became a doctor of all things. This was back in 1924 when he graduated from medical school. My mother was the first Greek girl, so far as we can determine, who actually went to college unescorted. I mean, Greek girls in those days did not do that, and graduated from Bates College in Maine in 1925 and became a teacher. I had some pretty great support at home. Why did I get into politics? Hard to tell, except by the time I was 9 or 10, I had this strong sense of injustice. And if you think we have problems these days, you should have been around back then. We lived in the town immediately west of Boston, 3 miles from downtown Boston. People of color could not live in this town, period. We had 3 black families. 2 were janitors. The third was this remarkable guy who had become a world-renowned tenor and somehow got somebody to sell him a house in Brookline. That was it. That was it. And it wasn't until well into the 1960s that a fair housing committee was created to try to break down these barriers. And for whatever reason, I just was very upset with this kind of stuff. Got involved in student politics. First, obviously, did my military service in Korea after I finished up at Swarthmore. Came back here, went to law school, and then started getting deeply and actively involved. And the rest, as they say, is history. But if you think we're having problems these days, should have been around back then. I mean, it was just terrible. And for whatever reason, I just found myself rebelling at this kind of stuff and getting actively involved. Just finishing up 8 years in the Massachusetts legislature and I won the Democratic nomination for lieutenant governor. And my running mate was Kevin White, who was the mayor of Boston. Unfortunately, we lost in 1970. I went back to the practice of the law. I did some other things as well. And then in 74, ran for governor and was elected for the first time. It was a period of great activism, no question about it. We were deeply involved in trying to change a lot of the kinds of things that we faced at that time. And that included both serious foreign policy problems. Remember, we were dealing with Vietnam, with the whole question of to what extent the United States should be intervening in this kind of thing. And needless to say, that period in the 60s and early 70s was a rough period, and the Vietnam War turned out to be a disaster, and a lesson we should learn, to tell you the truth, because I want the United States to be deeply and actively involved in the world, but as a peacemaker, not a war maker. And those were the days when we were running around intervening almost everywhere, and in many cases doing it very badly. And Vietnam was one of the worst. But it was a period of great public turmoil, frankly. I mean, I hope not, because as I said, I mean, there's so much that we can do and should do to be a constructive force in this world. And a lot of what we have done internationally not only ended up in failure. I mean, Vietnam was just a colossal failure. But one of the things that we should be doing is learning from our experience, all of us, no matter who we are, where we come from. And at this point in time, with the world facing important issues and problems, this running around sticking our nose in this problem and that problem, some other problem, which in most cases has resulted in failure, is not what we should be doing. I think the world, I mean, yeah, we've got some issues with certain parts of the world and certain countries and so on and so forth, and they with us. But I think the world is ready for a constructive, very constructive role for the United States, and that's the one that I hope will play. And you and your generation will be deeply and actively involved in it. I do know that what was going on at the time was very troubling. We were in the middle of an armed struggle that wasn't working. Today, Vietnam is an ally, is a friend, is a country that we work with, which gives you some sense of just how senseless a lot of that stuff was. But it was a very difficult period for the world and for us. That was just another major example, manifestation of what was going on. It was a terrible thing that happened. Should never have happened, but it happened. And not only were lives lost, but it should have told us something about ourselves and what we were doing and what was going on. And did we learn lessons from that? I'm not sure. We're still we've been in Afghanistan for 16 years and still can't seem to resolve that. And one of the things that we have to do is to get the international community much more actively involved in this kind of stuff. Going it alone doesn't work anymore, if it ever did. I'll try to keep it brief. About public service and one's involvement in public service. I'm a missionary for public service, especially with you guys, with younger people coming along. Why? Because there's nothing more fulfilling and satisfying than being in a position where you can make a difference in the lives of your fellow citizens. And I've had the great good fortune to be able to do that. And so can any young American who cares deeply about this country and about the world. And so I hope that one of the things that you all will be doing is getting deeply and actively involved in whatever role that makes sense to you. If it's elected politics, great. If it's serving in an administration at the state or local or national level that can make a difference, that's fine too. But being involved, getting involved, and having the great good fortune to be able to make a difference in this world, it's really very special. I fortunately have had that opportunity. Millions and millions of young Americans, I hope, will take advantage of that as well. Because you really can make a difference. Don't let anybody tell you that public service cannot make a difference in the lives of people. It can. And I hope that one of the things that will happen is a real commitment to serving in public life in some constructive way. There's nothing like it. It's one of the most personally fulfilling and satisfying things you can do. And it can make a difference. And I hope you and your generation will.